Let's get it burned nicely, guys. That should be good. Alright, so first YouTube Q&A. And asked my homegirl to ask me 5 questions about comics in general. See if I could answer. And here are her 5 questions. If you like darker, grittier stories, what are good characters to read? And she asked me specifically for Marvel. And if you know Marvel, Marvel's more known for their happy stories, Captain America, Iron Man, and Spider-Man, of course, you know? So I'm pretty sure that's why she doesn't know too many Marvel characters that are too dark, like me. But me personally, the first 3 I'm gonna say are Moon Knight, Sentry, and Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom literally sold his wife's soul to get his mother's soul back, and she rejected it, and it became a whole big old conundrum. He even tried selling Doctor Strange's soul. So, Doctor Doom. Alright. Moon Knight, like I said, he's had multiple runs, and they're all pretty fucking dark, if I'm gonna be honest. Right now, he's in his death arc, like every character has. So, he's been pretty good with that to me. He's been one of the characters that anytime I want to read a darker, grittier story, it's always been Moon Knight for me. Sentry. If you know this motherfucker, he's literally ex-drug addict. He was a junkie trying to get his next fix and got superpowers. And because of the superpowers, it manifested into the Void and the Sentry. The Void being the junkie side of him, like I've always thought of, and the Sentry always being that the person who he was before the drugs. Alright, so we also got Venom, Scarlet Witch, and Blade. Blade, of course, if you want to think darker, you're going to think vampires, especially right now during his current run. He's drunk the elixir of Dracula. That's what I've basically been calling it in my head. And he's understands true evil. So that's been interesting. And he's had his own rated R event going on right now. So Venom, he's been big in the last, I want to say, 7 years maybe, since Venomverse. So that's a pretty big one. Venom, his storylines, especially because he's been a father now, those have been really sad just because he's a father without a son. And me, I could relate to that as being a son without a father because my dad was locked up a lot. So that's why I've been kind of enjoying it. Now, if we're gonna say one character, like entirely, like a category of character you could just look up and like each run is probably gonna be pretty depressing, Ghost Rider. I remember I was on LSD one time and reading Ghost Rider, and I had to close it right from the opening page because I was seeing a whole bunch of guys getting crucified. And I was like, yeah, this is too much for what I'm on right now. So I had to shut it down, started reading some Swamp Thing. And that wasn't necessarily the greatest either because I started seeing skulls in the grass. So, yeah. Now, for me, I'm going to specifically say a run for this next character, Thor. Thor's Gore the God Butcher storyline is one of the best ones. Fuck what the MCU did. Don't pay it mind. This is the version that is the best. Gore the God Butcher from the comics. If they were to make an anime adaptation out of it, it would make it so much better and redeem it and get Christian Bale to still voice Gore because he was robbed of a good role. Okay, so next on my list is the Black Knight. Black Knight, to me, when I was reading it, he was going through like a identity crisis, and I found that pretty cool. And with him having a daughter, which really hasn't been used in Marvel continuity since, or even Black Knight hasn't been really used in continuity. Marvel has a really bad problem with using their characters. That's the reason why I don't really read Marvel no more, even though I pay for the Marvel app. But the Black Knight, sorry, Man Thing. Man Thing is classified as Marvel Swamp Thing. He really ain't. He's the guardian of the multiverse, and that's that's it's impressive. As simple as that. Like I was reading him in the new Hulk run, and he is still as strong as he's been. Homeboy is still the reason why he's guardian of the Nexus, and his origin is dark. If I remember it correctly, his origin is pretty dark. Now Black Widow, she was also on my list. If you want a darker, grittier type character, Punisher characters, Black Widow characters, Daredevil characters are always going to have that. They're human characters that go through a hell. So, of course, she's going to be on the list. Doctor Strange. Homeboy, last year, if I remember correctly, died. Became the Sorcerer Supreme of the Death Realm. His girl brought him back to life. And now he's back to being our Sorcerer Supreme. He's also had other storylines, like my favorite that I had to put down. Where is it? Doctor Strange's Damnation. That storyline, if I remember correctly, Mephisto brought hell to Las Vegas, and now the supernatural heroes are all having to deal with it. And one of my favorite standout characters from that run was Scarlet Spider. And it kind of made me want to get to know Ben more. And I don't regret it, but Marvel does need to do better with Ben too. There's a bunch of characters, like I say, for me, that Marvel just has great characters. They just don't do well with them. They're just plot-based characters for the moment. Who's next on here? Silver Surfer. Silver Surfer, I have one of the comics, Silver Surfer Black, and that one's more of a mental trip comic. Like, if you read the art, like, I read this entire art on LSD, like, it is fucking amazingly beautiful. But, Silver Surfer. Ronan the Executioner, or not Ronan the Executioner, that's the alien, but Ronan, Hawkeye version, what's it called? It's pretty good. Me personally, it doesn't stick out to me other than the all new Avengers. And other than that, it's good. I could see why they fucked within the MCU, but to me, I think the MCU kind of did it better than the comics. But it's just like I continue to say, Marvel has a big problem with not reusing their characters properly. Alright, one of the other ones, Werewolf by Night. Both iterations of the characters pretty well. One of them's Hispanic, one of them's white. Both of them are well, honestly. I already said Daredevil, Scarlet Spider. Now, runs that I could say that people should read. Doctor Strange, Damnation. Moon Knight, 2006. Or, not 2006, 2016. That Moon Knight run is basically the one that they did in the TV show about the asylum and all that. Thor, God of Thunder, The Incredible Hulk. The current run that I'm reading is fucking beautiful with the horror aspects and all that. I love how it's drawn when Bruce is transforming into the Hulk. It's literally like literally like a piece of his body breaking down and then fucking becoming, Hulk and shit. And if you read the Immortal Hulk storyline, you understand it more because of where Hulk's powers come from. They come from the Green Door, which is how God chooses who's going to be the next gamma-empowered person in the Marvel Universe. I read Timeless, and I'm going to do a voice-over read of this later on my TikTok and probably upload it here onto YouTube. But that story, I read it. It was beautiful. If you know the characters Danny Rand and Luke Cage well, or even not that well enough, you are gonna probably like this just because they're the heroes for a lot higher. But in that storyline, they call themselves the heroes for life, and it's kind of sad just seeing Danny become what Danny becomes. And then you got X-Force. X-Force is always been just one of those runs that have like pretty dark shit going around. Century, as I said, is literally man versus man, and it's not even just like dude versus dude, it's himself versus himself, and one of himself could literally save galaxies and kill it. And like I said, the other side of himself is literally the darkness that he could let consume him and all that. Is honestly great. Me personally, I think Sentry is one of those characters that Marvel should have used with a lot more, but he's also one of those characters that are so strong that it's like, ooh, huh. Like, what can we do with this guy? Because me personally, Sentry is on the level of Superman, just not to the point of stories where Superman's done literally things like hold the entire creation in his hands. Like Superman's done that. All right, so we also got Marvel's Knight's Punisher, Danny Rand's Ghost Rider, Avengers Forever. That entire storyline is kind of sad when you really read it, just because these are multiverse variants of the heroes that we grew up with, and these versions of them are people that lost themselves, lost their ways, regret their past. So yeah, like one of my favorite issues is honestly Tony Stark's issue, and it's basically the Demon in a Bottle all over again, but modernized, and how they modernized it was so well. King in Black, that entire storyline is one of was the storyline that solidified Venom as one of the top heroes in the Marvel pantheon of this modern generation, and it's honestly great. The Visions by Tom King, I haven't necessarily read it myself. It's something now that I got the Marvel Universe app I'm gonna read, but from what I've heard from outside, it's kind of sad. And yeah, these are storylines, like I said, I think kind of resemble that. And I guess I'm gonna have to do a part 2 for the rest of the questions, because I honestly did not think it was going to take me this long. And YouTube's only allowing me to upload 15 minutes until I'm verified onto it. And I tried to already go through all that. It still hasn't let me be verified, so I have to deal with how I deal with it. Alright, so for her next question was, what are great jumping spots for Spider-Man? You could jump right now. The Gang Wars is about to be over. So you could start off picking up, after Gang Wars. But I'm saying it like that because I haven't been the biggest fan of John Romita's big run that he's been doing. And I'm not talking shit on the artist. Like, he's great, John Romita Sr. Like, they're both great when it comes to Spider-Man. Their art style is perfect. Like, when it comes to the character, they did so well for so many years, but the storyline itself and how Peter's been these last few years, I haven't necessarily liked. I grew up on the Ultimate Spider-Man because it was the only thing I could afford. I could listen to it at any time on audio because of Comicstorian. So just put it on, listen to it all the way, all 4 hours. By the end of it, I was crying. But it was just because I grew up watching Sam Raimi's version, Spectacular Spider-Man, the animated Ultimate Spider-Man, and then once I was able to finally find comics and stuff, that was one of the first ones I have ever seen. Necessarily, if you know me, I hate the Ultimate run, the Ultimates universe in general, but this Spider-Man was something great. But something else you could read is the Amazing Spider-Man 1999. I've heard that's great, controversial, but also great at the same time. And as I said, the current run of Gang Wars is about to be over, and next guy's about to be starting to pick it up. So we can see that. Next question. I'm sorry.